Say it again? Call her a thief again, in front of everyone. I dare you.
Nothing. A shop girl. A nobody who crawled her way into my son's bed.
The slap never landed. Chibuike caught Mrs. Obioma's wrist mid-air, inches from Onye's face, in front of 300 guests and a wall of cameras. The champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Say it again, Chibuike said, his voice low and shaking with fury. Call her a thief again, in front of everyone. I dare you. She is nothing, Mrs. Obioma spat, yanking her wrist free. A shop girl, a nobody who crawled her way into my son's bed. Enough! Chibuike's roar cracked through the room. He turned, pulled Onye against him, and kissed her, hard, desperate, unapologetic, in front of his mother, his board members, and every camera flashing white. When he broke away, his forehead pressed to hers, he whispered, I don't care what she says. I don't care what any of them say. You are mine and I am yours, and nobody in this room gets to decide that but us. Onye's hands trembled against his chest. Tears streaked her face, not from shame, but from the terrifying relief of finally being chosen out loud. If you want to know how a jewelry store's most overlooked employee ended up here, in the arms of the man the tabloids called untouchable, stay with this story to the end, and don't forget to hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's go back 9 weeks to where this all began. Onye slammed the drawer shut so hard the pens rattled inside it. Where is it, Patience? Where is my commission? She demanded, planting both palms flat on the counter of Solaris Jewel House. Patience didn't even look up from her phone. Which commission? The Adeleke wedding set, 600,000 naira. I closed that sale myself, and it's not in my pay this month. Again. Maybe you should learn to read your contract, Patience said, finally lifting her eyes, cold and amused. Commissions go through management first. I decide who earned what. I earned it. I stood here for 3 hours convincing that woman to walk out because her fiancé insulted the ring size. And I decided the sale doesn't count, Patience cut in, stepping closer, close enough that Onye could smell her expensive perfume. You are a shop girl, Onye, not a manager. Watch your tone or watch the door. Onye's jaw tightened. She wanted to scream, to flip the glass counter, to tell Patience exactly what she thought of a manager who stole from the very staff too poor to fight back. Instead, she swallowed it, the way she'd swallowed it for 2 years, and turned back to the counter, hands shaking with a rage she refused to let anyone see. That was when the old one walked in. She shuffled through the glass doors in a faded wrapper, feet bare beneath the hem, skin cracked from sun and years. The security guard at the entrance didn't move to stop her. He simply looked away, pretending not to see, the way people do when they've decided someone doesn't deserve their attention. Who let that in here? Ogechi hissed from behind the counter, wrinkling her nose. This is Solaris Jewel House, not a motor park. The old woman staggered slightly, one hand pressed to the glass display case for balance. Her lips were dry, cracked at the corners. Please, she rasped. Water, just water. Nobody moved. Patience turned her back deliberately. Ogechi laughed under her breath to a customer. Onye grabbed a bottle from under the counter and crossed the floor before she could stop herself. Omonye, here, Mama, she said gently, cracking the seal and pressing it into her trembling hands. Drink slowly. Onye, Patience backed. Get back to your station. We don't serve beggars. She's thirsty, not a criminal, Onye snapped back, surprising even herself. I'll pay her the water myself, if it's such a crime to have a heart in this place. The old woman's eyes, sharp, unexpectedly clear, despite her frailty, studied Onye's face for a long moment. What is your name, my daughter? Onye. Onye, the old woman repeated softly, as if tasting the word. A gift, fitting. She straightened, some of the weakness falling away from her posture like a mask slipping. Show me your finest collection, the Adeze bridal set if you have it. Ogechi's eye actually laughed out loud this time. Mama, that's 14 million naira. Perhaps you should. I did not ask your opinion. the old woman said, and something in her voice, still wrapped in velvet, made even Ogechi's laughter die in her throat. Onye swallowed hard, glanced at Patience's furious face, and reached for the display key anyway. Right this way, Mama. Let me show you something beautiful. The old woman's eyes lit up as Onye laid out the bridal set, diamonds catching the overhead light and scattering them across the glass counter like tiny stars. This one, the old woman said, pointing a wrinkled finger at the largest necklace, and the matching earrings, and that bracelet there, the gold one with the emerald stones. Ogechi's mouth fell open. Mama, that's... I heard you the first time, the old woman said calmly. 14 million. Wrap it. Patience appeared at Onye's shoulder like a shadow, her voice syrupy with false politeness now that money was on the table. Of course, Mama, of course. How will you be paying? Card, transfer, or cash? The old woman reached into a small cloth pouch tied at her waist and produced exactly 4,000 naira in crumpled notes. The room went cold. This is all I have with me, she said simply, but I will pay the rest. I give you my word. Patience's smile shattered instantly. Your word? Your word? She laughed, sharp and cruel. Security, security, we have a thief in the store. She's not a thief, Onye said, stepping between the old woman and the approaching guard, her heart hammering against her ribs. Despite her protest, despite Onye's shouting, despite the small crowd of customers now filming everything on their phones. That was when the doors burst open. A tall man in a charcoal suit strode in, flanked by two assistants who looked terrified simply to be near him. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Patience's face went the color of chalk. Take your hands off my grandmother, the man said, and his voice didn't need to be raised to command the entire store's silence. The guard released the old woman instantly, stumbling back as if burned. Mr. Chibuike, Patience stammered, all pretense of authority draining out of her. Sir, we didn't know she was... You didn't know she was worth respecting? Chibuike's eyes swept the room, cold and assessing, before landing on his grandmother. Nay, are you hot? Did they touch you? I am fine, my son, Nay, whom I said, though her voice trembled now, not from weakness, but from something else, pride perhaps, or vindication. But that one there, she pointed at Onye, she gave me water when I was dying of thirst. She stood between me and their cruelty when everyone else turned away. Chibuike turned to Onye for the first time. Their eyes met, and something passed between them that neither could name, recognition maybe, or the strange electricity of two people who had both spent their lives being underestimated in different rooms. You defended my grandmother, he said slowly, against your own manager.
Knowing you could lose your job?
I didn't think about the job, Onye said honestly, her voice barely above a whisper now. All her earlier fire suddenly replaced with something softer, more vulnerable. I only thought about the way nobody else in this store was looking at her like a human being. Chibuike studied her for a long moment, something shifting behind his dark eyes. What is your name? Onye. Onye, he repeated, the same way his grandmother had, as if the word carried weight he hadn't expected. I owe you a debt I don't know how to repay. You owe me nothing, she said quickly. I only did what was right. That, Nehuama said, smiling for the first time, is exactly why you're the one who deserves repaying. If this story has your heart racing already, imagine what happens next. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment telling us who you think is the real villain of this story so far. Trust us, you have no idea what Ogechi and Patience are about to unleash. Patience's hands curled into fists at her sides, her humiliation cuddling fast into something far more dangerous. She caught Ogechi's eye across the room, and in that single glance, an unspoken alliance was born. One built entirely on destroying the girl who had just embarrassed them both in front of Lagos's most powerful family. 3 days later, a black car pulled up outside the small Face Me I Face You apartment Onye shared with her aunt in Ajegunle. Onye, someone is looking for you outside, her aunt called, peering through the window with wide eyes. Onye stepped out to find one of Chibuike's assistants standing beside the car, holding an envelope. Mr. Chibuike would like to see you. He has an offer for you. Personal assistant to the CEO of the Solaris Group. Onye's breath caught. Me? He barely knows me. He knows enough, the assistant said simply. When she arrived at the towering Solaris Group headquarters an hour later, Chibuike was waiting in his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking somehow less like a billionaire and more like a man who hadn't slept. "You came," he said, and something in his voice sounded almost relieved. "You sent a car and an envelope. I didn't feel like I had much choice," Onye said, and to her surprise, he laughed, a real laugh, warm and unguarded. "I want you to work for me, not because you saved my grandmother, because I watched you stand your ground against two women who could have ended your career, and you didn't flinch." "I was terrified," Onye admitted. "I know," Chibuike said, stepping closer. "That's what made it brave." They stood there, closer than either had intended, the air between them thick with everything neither dared to say out loud yet. "Chibuike," she whispered, "people like you don't end up looking at people like me this way." "Then I suppose," he murmured, tilting her chin up gently, "I'm not the man people expect me to be." He kissed her then, slow and certain, nothing like the desperate kiss the world would see months later. This one soft, searching, full of quiet wonder. When they broke apart, Onye's eyes were wet. "I haven't even said yes to the job yet," she said, breathless. "Say yes to both," Chibuike whispered across her forehead. "The job and this." "Yes," she said, "to both." News of Onye's sudden appointment spread through Solaris Jewel House like wildfire, and within a week, Ogechi and Patience had transformed their humiliation into a plan. "She thinks she's better than us now," Ogechi hissed, slipping a diamond bracelet into the lining of Onye's old work bag, left behind in the staff room. "And this," Patience added, forwarding a doctored photo to 3 gossip blogs, Onye's face pasted beside a stranger's body in a compromising pose. "By tomorrow, all of Lagos will know exactly what kind of woman seduced her way into the Solaris empire." By morning, the headlines were everywhere. CEO's new assistant caught in theft and scandal. Onye's phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from strangers calling her a snake, a gold digger, a thief. "I didn't do this," she said, voice breaking, standing in Chibuike's office as security guards whispered outside the door. "Chibuike, I swear to you, I never touched that bracelet, and that photo isn't even me." "I believe you," he said immediately, without a second hesitation, pulling her into his arms as she trembled. "Do you hear me? I believe you completely. I mean, I believe you fully, without question." "Everyone else doesn't," she whispered across his chest. "Your mother is going to think—" "My mother's opinion doesn't decide what's true," Chibuike said firmly. "Ogechi and Patience made one mistake. They forgot my grandmother has eyes everywhere in that store." Within hours, Inehuoma arrived at the boardroom, security footage in hand, the recording clearly showing Ogechi slipping the bracelet into the bag and metadata proving the scandalous photo had been digitally altered days after Onye had already left her old job. "Arrest them," Chibuike said coldly, watching Ogechi's face crumble as police entered the boardroom. Please, Mr. Chibuike, I was only jealous. I only wanted what she has." "What she has," Nehuoma said, stepping forward, "she earned with kindness, not cruelty. That's a lesson you will have plenty of time to learn where you are going. Don't disappear on us now if you've made it this far. You already know this story is far from over. Like this video, subscribe for the next chapter, and comment below telling us if you think Chibuike's mother is about to make things even harder for Onye. Trust us, you are not ready for what happens at the engagement gala. Onye exhaled shakily as the guards led Ogechi and Patience away, Chibuike's hand steady at her back. But relief was short-lived, because across the city, in a mansion overlooking the lagoon, Mrs. Obioma had just seen the morning headlines, and she was already dialing her lawyer. "Absolutely not," Mrs. Obioma snapped,
pacing her marble living room while her lawyer sat stiffly on the sofa. My son will not marry a shop girl who was just splashed across every gossip blog in Lagos, scandal or no scandal. Draft an agreement. I want her paid off and gone before the week ends. Mother, Chibuike said from the hallway, arms crossed. I can hear you from the hallway. Good, Mrs. Obioma said, unbothered. Then you will hear me say directly, this girl is beneath this family, and I won't watch you throw away everything your father built for a woman who probably planned this theft scandal to trap you. She didn't plan anything, Chibuike said, his voice dangerously calm. She was the target of it, and if you'd asked me instead of assuming, you would know that. I raised you to protect this family's name, Mrs. Obioma said, stepping closer, not to hand it to strangers. You raised me to know right from wrong, Chibuike shot back, and what's wrong is watching you humiliate someone before you've even met her. Mrs. Obioma's lawyer cleared his throat and slid an envelope across the table. A settlement, 50 million naira if she agrees to end the relationship quietly and sign an NDA. Chibuike didn't touch it. Show this to Onyinye yourself, mother. Ask her yourself. I dare you. Mrs. Obioma did exactly that, arriving unannounced at Onyinye's house. 2 days later, envelope in hand, chin lifted in practiced superiority. 50 million naira, she said, sliding it across the small kitchen table. Take it, disappear. Let my son marry someone suitable and you can start a new life somewhere far from Lagos. Onyinye stared at the envelope for a long moment, then slid it back. I don't want your money, she said quietly. I never wanted anything from your family. I wanted your son to be happy, and if that means walking away, I'll walk away, not because you paid me to, because he asked me to, and he hasn't. Mrs. Obioma's composure cracked, just slightly. You would really refuse 50 million naira? I refused to let a manager steal 600,000 naira from me because it was mine and I'd earned it. What makes you think I'd take 50 million I didn't earn just to abandon someone I love? Mrs. Obioma left without another word, but something in her face had shifted, the first crack in a wall she'd spent years building. 3 weeks later, at the Solaris Group's annual gala, Chibuike stood at the podium, Onyinye at his side, ready to announce a new community initiative, when a journalist shouted a question about the theft scandal, reigniting the whispers across the room. Is it true your fiancé was involved in criminal activity, Mr. Chibuike? She was the victim of it, Chibuike said sharply, orchestrated by 2 women who have since been arrested and convicted. Ask her yourself if she thinks she deserves to be here, Mrs. Obioma called out from the crowd, unable to resist one final challenge, cameras swinging towards her instantly. The room held its breath. I deserve to be here, Onyinye said, stepping forward, voice steady despite hundreds of eyes on her, because I've never once lied about who I am or where I came from. I was a shop girl who gave an old woman water. That's the whole truth. If that disqualifies me from love, then love was never meant for people like me anyway. But I don't believe that, and neither does your son. Mrs. Obioma's hand rose, fury overtaking her, aimed straight at Onyinye's face, and Chibuike caught her wrist mid-air, exactly as he had months before this story began. Say it again, he warned. Call her a thief again, in front of everyone. I dare you. And this time, when he pulled Onyinye close and kissed her in front of the cameras, his mother didn't fight it. She simply stood there watching her son choose, fully and unwavering.
By the following spring, Mrs. Obioma stood beside Enehoma at Onyinye and Chibuike's wedding. Her expression softened by months of watching a girl she tried to buy off instead build a foundation for underpaid retail workers across Lagos, using her own salary before Chibuike ever offered a naira. As a wedding gift, Chibuike handed her the deed to Solaris Jewel House itself. Run it your way, he said, the way you always wished someone had run it for you. Onyinye looked at the deed, then at the man who had once been a stranger she gave water to, and smiled through tears. Every girl who walks into this store thirsty will never be turned away again. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Smash that like button, subscribe for more stories like this one, and comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. We read every single comment, and we can't wait to bring you the next story just like this.